Hello students, good morning. This is the second video for you in the chapter Chemical Reactions and Equation for the students of class 10th CBS. I have made the first video. If you students have not gone through the first video, you can see my first video, for which the link is available in the description box. Okay, so here the second part of the chapter Chemical Reactions and Equation is the chemical equation. Chemical equation is a statement used in chemistry to represent a chemical reaction. Means chemical equation is a statement which is used in chemistry to represent a chemical reaction. For example, we can say when zinc metal reacts with dilute sulfuric acid, zinc sulfate is formed with the release of hydrogen gas. This is a statement to represent a chemical reaction. Now, to represent a chemical equation in the form of sentence is quite long. Therefore, we used to represent a chemical equation in the simpler way. This statement can be written in the simplified way as zinc plus sulfuric acid zinc sulfate plus hydrogen gas. This simpler form of the chemical equation is called word equation. This way of representation of a chemical reaction is called word equation. And when this equation is written in the form of symbol and formula, like zinc is written as Zn, which is its symbol, and sulfuric acid we can write its formula H2SO4. For the zinc sulfate we can write ZnSO4, and for hydrogen we can write H2. So this kind of representation of a true chemical change is called symbol equation. This is symbol equation. Now, this equation these equations on the basis of number of atoms in the reactant side. These are reactants and these are products. on the basis of number of atoms of each element in the reactants and products. Chemical equations are of two types. One is called unbalanced chemical equation. Other is called balanced chemical equation. Now, let us start to discuss unbalanced chemical equation. Unbalanced chemical equations are also called skeletal equation. The chemical equation in which the number of atoms of each element in the reactant side is not equal to the number of atoms in the product side is called unbalanced chemical equation. If we write a chemical equation like this, magnesium plus oxygen to form magnesium oxide. In this equation, the number of magnesium atom is 1 in the reactant, and it is 1 in the product side also. But the number of oxygen atoms in the reactant side is 2, whereas it is 1 in the product side. Therefore, it is a unbalanced chemical equation. The balanced chemical equation the chemical equations are called balanced if the number of atoms of each element in the reactants is separately equal to the number of atoms in the product. For example, if we take zinc metal and allow it to react with sulfuric acid, it forms zinc sulfate and hydrogen gas is released. In this equation, see, the number of atoms of zinc is 1 in the reactant side as well as in the product side. The number of hydrogen atom is 2 in the reactant and it is 2 in the product also. The number of sulfur atom is 1 in the reactant and 1 in the product also. The number of oxygen atom is 4 in the reactant and it is 4 in the product also. Means the number of each element in the reactant is exactly equal to the number of each atoms in the products. Therefore, this is called balanced chemical equation. Now, how do we write a chemical equation? A chemical equation can be written by using the 3 steps. The first step means the steps to write a chemical equation. Step first is write the reactant. Suppose a reactant is A and other reactant is B. So we write the reactants and put the plus sign between the reactants. The second step is to write the product. Suppose the products are C and D. So we used to write C plus D. Means we also put the plus sign between the products. The third step is to put the arrow sign or the sign of equality in between the reactants and products. These are reactants and these are products. We used to put the sign, arrow sign or sign of equality between reactants and products. So these are three steps to write a chemical equation. Now we shall discuss the steps used to balance a chemical equation. Balancing of chemical equations. To understand the balancing of chemical equation, we consider a chemical equation Fe plus H2O forms Fe3O4 plus H2. The first step we should take is the number of atoms in reactant and in product. Number of atoms of iron is 1 in reactant and 3 in product. Number of hydrogen atom is 2 in reactant and 2 in the product. Number of oxygen is 1 in the reactant and 4 in the product. This is the first step which we take to balance a chemical equation. The second step is to decide the compound which contains maximum number of atoms. Now in that compound we should select the element whose is the maximum. In the given equation, in the taken equation, oxygen is the element which is in maximum number. So here, number of oxygen atom in reactant and in product. Separately we shall decide. The number of oxygen atom in reactant is 1 and in product it is 4. This is the initial number of oxygen. Now to balance, we shall multiply it by 4. It becomes equal. Now we shall write the equation Fe 4H2O Fe3O4 H2. In the third step, we take the number of hydrogen atom. In reactant, in product. The number of hydrogen atom is initially 8 and in product it is 2. To balance, two into 4 becomes 8. Then we shall write the equation Fe 4H2O Fe3O4 plus 4H2. In the next step, now we look into the partially balanced equation and select the element whose number of atom is not equal in the reactant and product side. In this equation, we see iron is the element whose number is not equal in the both sides of the equation. So we multiply iron in the reactant side with 3 to make the number of atoms of iron equal in both sides of the equation. Both sides of the equation. Now, the chemical equation is balanced. In the last and final step, we can check. In the first step, we have considered separately the number of atoms which were not equal. In the final step, we can check the number of each atoms of each element in the reactant and products become equal or not. Now again write the equation 3Fe 4H2O Fe3O4 4H2 and count the number of atoms of each element in reactants and products. The number of iron is the reactant, it becomes 3 in the product also. Number of hydrogen is 4 to the 8 in reactant and 4 to the 8 in the product. Number of oxygen is 4 in the reactant and it is also 4 in the product. Hence, we have now checked the equation is correctly balanced. Now we should see some other examples through which we can confirm and become confident to balance a chemical equation. Suppose we have taken a reaction MnO2 HCl forms MnCl2 plus H2O plus Cl2. It is unbalanced chemical equation. Now use the method to balance the chemical equation. Count the number of atoms of each element in reactant and product. Consider the compounds in which the number of atoms is the maximum and select the element whose number of atoms is the maximum. See, in the product, chlorine, the number of atoms of chlorine element is 4. 2 here in the Cl2 and 2 in the MnCl2. It is 4. What we should do? We should multiply the compound in the reactant side having chlorine element with suitable number, that is 4 HCl. The number of chlorine atoms become equal in both reactant and product side. Now the number of hydrogen atoms become unequal. It becomes 4 in the reactant side and it is present in 2 in the product side. In water, the number of hydrogen atom is 2 and in HCl, by balancing chlorine atoms, the number of hydrogen atoms becomes 4. So multiply water with 2 to make the number of hydrogen atoms equal. It becomes 4 and oxygen atoms become 2. Now see, the number of atoms of any element which is left to be balanced. See, oxygen is 2 in the product. It is also present in MnO2. 2 oxygen atom is present in MnO2. The number of manganese is 1 in both sides of the chemical equation. Right? Hence, this equation becomes balanced. Another example is magnesium nitrite plus water forms magnesium hydroxide and ammonia. I can see the number of atoms of magnesium is 3 in the reactant side. Multiply magnesium hydroxide with 3, it becomes equal, and multiply ammonia with 2 because the number of nitrogen atom is present in Mg3 and 2 is 2. Now see the other atoms of the element. Hydrogen becomes 3 2 is 6 and 2 3 is 6, 12. Number of hydrogen atom is 12 in the product side, and it is 2 in the reactant side. So multiply it with 6. So what becomes in H2O, hydrogen becomes 12, oxygen becomes 6. And in the product, MgOH whole 2, the number of oxygen atom is 2 3 is 6. So number of atoms of hydrogen, oxygen and magnesium in both sides of the chemical equation become equal, right? And the chemical equation is balanced. Now I am writing some chemical equation which is unbalanced. You should try to balance this chemical equation. KMnO4 plus HCl, KCl, MnCl2, 4H2O plus Cl2. N2 plus H2 NH3 Fe plus O2 Fe2O3 K2 Cr2O7 plus H2SO4 K2SO4 plus Cr2SO4 whole 3 plus H2O plus O2. Mg plus HCl, MgCl2 plus H2. Hello. If you have balanced the chemical equation, please check. I am balancing these equations which I have given you for the balancing. Now the number of nitrogen atoms seen in the reactant is 2. Multiply the ammonia with 2 to make the number of nitrogen atoms equal in both sides of the chemical equation. Now, by balancing the nitrogen atoms, the number of hydrogen atoms becomes 6. 2 3 is 6. So multiply here hydrogen with 3. You will have the balanced equation. If you have checked the equation second, now see the first equation. KMnO4 plus HCl. Number of atoms of oxygen in the reactant is 4. Here it is 4H2 already given in the chemical equation 4. The number of hydrogen atoms becomes 4 to the 8. So multiply HCl with 8. And now consider the number of chlorine atoms. Chlorine atom is 2, 3. Multiply here Cl2 by 5 by 2. The number of chlorine atoms becomes 5 plus 2 plus 3, 8. Number of potassium is 1. Number of manganese is 1. The equation is balanced. This equation can also be balanced by multiplying to make this fraction into whole number by multiplying whole of the equation by 2. So we can also write it as 2 KMnO4 plus 16 HCl, 2 KCl, 2 MnCl2, 8 H2O and 5 Cl2. Right? Now, the third chemical equation is Fe plus O2, Fe2O3. So multiply iron with 2. And oxygen by 3 by 2. It becomes balanced. Like the first equation, we can also write it the number of oxygen atoms, oxygen molecules in this equation in the whole number. So we multiply the whole equation, means both sides of the equation by 2. So you will have 4Fe plus 6H2O, 2Fe2. In the next equation, you see the number of oxygen atom is 7. So if a compound having oxygen, a salt having oxygen, reacts with any acid to form salt, water with the release of oxygen gas, the number of oxygen atom present in the salt K2Cr2O7, the number of oxygen atom is 7. To balance this oxygen atom, first of all you Hello students, a lot of thanks to all the students who have watched my first video and gave a lot of positive inspiration through their response. I have made the second video under heading chemical equation, and I have tried to give the information which will be beneficial for you. Again, I am requesting all of you, go through the video carefully, enjoy it, learn the chemical equation properly, collect your problem and queries, and ask your problem, any queries, through comments in the description box. The remaining part of this section is how to make a chemical equation more informative. For that, I shall make another video for you students.